Hi, everybody. It's Nancy Reyes with For Your Canine.
And Joanne Soike with Fur Better, Fur Worse.
And Lisa Bataska with Canine Defined.
Hopefully you guys are all keeping warm out there. It's getting chilly, and I'm starting to
What?
adjust to the weather.
It was
It
beautiful
is,
today.
yeah, it was a little chilly here. I'm in Pennsylvania. I'm not home, so it's a little chillier here, but not bad. Nice fall day. Beautiful colors here. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about how the human mental game affects dog training. And we're not only specific to competition, we're talking about dog training in general. Um, when you're working with your dog and how your mental state really matters. Um, so we're going to also address some competition stuff, but we really wanted to talk about just general dog training and how you carry yourself and how you're mentally what your mental state and emotional state how affects your dog, right? Because here's the thing, our dogs live with us and they're part of our family, and so they do care about they're very well aware. They know us better than we know ourselves. They know if you're thinking about taking them for a walk. They think that if you're they follow your every move, so they are so in tune to us, so that when we go into training we are shocked if we're different or something's different, that the dog is not behaving in the way we're wanting them to behave, if you will. So I wanted to kind of address that because that's a big piece of it, right? A lot of people get so focused on training the dog that they forget the other part of that, which is you know you and how you and your mental status and your mental situation affects training, and also giving yourself a little grace when you're not feeling like training or you're not feeling well or you're feeling a certain way. And sometimes you might start training, and this has happened to me a few times. I'm like, okay, I'm going to train the dog and I have all the best intentions, and then something happens that takes that good intention away. And sometimes you want to power through, in my case, because I usually don't have a lot of time and I might not have another chance to do it. But if you train in that mindset or that with that not so positive setup, it's not really fair to the dog because they don't understand why you're not engaged, or why you're in a bad mood while you're working with them. So it's one of those things that I have to check myself all the time on that, because I do tend to feel rushed and I'm in a hurry, and then and it shows in my training because my dogs are like, yeah, you are not right. And every dog will handle that in a very different way. Some dogs will be like, okay, but still feeling uncomfortable. Other dogs will just start being silly or not listening or not paying attention, and other dogs will be just like, I don't, or shut, they might shut down. So it's one of those things I wanted to kind of address it because we're always talking about the dog's state of mind, but today I was like, oh, we're going to talk a little bit about the people because that makes a difference, right? And your frame of mind, if for those of you who compete, it carries over into the ring too. So it's being that consistency will affect things. So I don't know. What do you guys think? I know all of us have had moments of, I don't want to train my dog today. I'm mad at him, or just not having a great day in general.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Joe.
go ahead. Oh, me?
Yeah.
I have a certain pointy eared one that is really tests my patience. Like today, I took the dogs to train today. They haven't done anything since Tuesday, and so they were extra, like
Yeah.
big time. And so they were whining by the time we even pulled up. So they were like, "Yay, finally we get to get out of the house." It's been busy. So he gets so over aroused sometimes just at the art of going into the building. And so one of the things that he does is he spins and he scream barks at the top of his lungs forcefully at me, and he'll try and grab his leash, right? And I know that it's just a like a redirect is just a way to focus that onto something. But I don't like that because leashes are expensive and he has big teeth and he makes tooth holes in leashes, right? And so you try very calmly to not match that energy and to say nope, we're sitting and we're not going in, and he physically cannot. I mean, I sometimes have waited minutes at the door, and he it almost seems to amp him up more to have to wait. So I sometimes, if he's in that mood, it's like I just sort of have to test where the waters are, right? Because I don't know, call that not consistent or whatever you want. But if he's screaming at the top of his lungs, sometimes you just got to go inside and do your thing. So to me, like that was today. I just was like, if you out the leash, do not put it in your mouth. I will open the door, and he did. And he was good going down the hallway, and he was good going into the crate room. And as soon as we're there, I'm trying to take his harness off, and again, he's going for the leash, and it's just like, so I love him and he's fine once we start working. But those moments, oh my God, like I hate you so much right now. You are 5 years old. Pull it together. What is your problem? And I mean, I'm just being honest. Like sometimes I don't know what to do. So you just do the best you can and you try to be kind and you try to be understanding. But it's like, I don't want to work you, but I know if I don't, tomorrow will be worse. So
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
But it's true. And then trying to engage your
Find my
kind of
own.
yeah, exactly. And trying to engage and try to feel more happy and working them and just be engaged with them makes a difference, and that's really what they want, because especially like, and yeah, my dogs go through the same thing. Sometimes we have times where we don't get a lot of work, or we don't get a lot of mental or physical exercise. So when we do eventually train, you just know going in it's going to be a rough one sometimes.
I think too, like because doing this work, like we have a lot in reserve for other people's dogs, right? But when it comes to our own, we're like, hey, why don't you just do it? What's the problem? I mean, and it's true. Like today, I was like, okay, today's my day off. I'm going to go ahead and clean the house and this and that. So the dogs were crated a lot. And then they come out and they're just big butt heads. And I'm like, I can't today. Go in your crates and choose something, or run in the yard or something like that. And they just, it's difficult. I'm not going to lie. There are days that are more trying than others. And I think a lot of it for me right now is just being constantly on. So, I do board and trains. And so I've had a dog with me for a period of time, and he's a teenager and tries my every last nerve in my being. And I am, so having leftover in the reserve is really, something to think about. And so, so it was tough today, but two of my dogs got out to work with, funny. We were just talking about having somebody else work the dogs. Saturday, I had somebody, it was a training student that was, whatever, she's learning and stuff. And she worked Mick, my puppy, and then Tenor, because they're the most sociable and easy to handle. And I can make sure that they're not super sensitive. Nothing can happen. So, but they got worked and they were all happy. Everyone else is like jumping off the ceilings. And I'm like, oh, please stop.
Yeah. Well, and it goes back to, life goes in the way even for us, because while we do dog training for a living, we do other people's dogs. We're training
Right.
other people's dogs, not our own. So sometimes our dogs do get the back burner and all that. And sometimes, I'm going to be honest, I feel a little resentful that sometimes I don't get the opportunity to work them, even though I know it's what I signed up for. It's my business. I get it. But it's something that you want to you got to put behind you. So this topic came to mind. I started train I did start taking a class with one of my labs in the morning, and usually I try to squeeze in the training throughout the day and in the evening. And I found myself having such a different mindset when I was working her in the morning first thing. I wasn't rushed to get to her class. I got there. It's at my facility. So I get there. I go to class. I am fully engaged with that dog in that moment. I'm able to listen. I'm more relaxed. I'm not worried about what other people are thinking in the class. It's a small class. Instructor's super patient, and it's an obedience class for like competitive obedience class. And and I find being so fully engaged in that moment with that dog, um, that I was like, this is what got me into this business in the first place, right? And it's such a when you're engaged and you have consistent goals and guidelines in that moment, you're breathing, you're really one with your dog. It's such a great feeling to not have to be thinking about other things. So I feel like mindset is really important because even though you might be going through the motions of getting in a class, I feel my other dogs are a bit cheated because they don't have that full attention from me all the time. When I'm trying to squeeze in the classes throughout the day, it's not the same thing. So uh it started me, and then it started me thinking I need to get myself better prepared when I do go with the dogs that I'm rushing to class with, to just really engage and relax and change my breathing, my mindset, to be able to be engaged for, even if the class isn't an hour, maybe if I only get 30 minutes of it, it's a good quality 30 minutes of time. And so, and I thought this would be because some people, they come to class, they're not that engaged with their own dogs, or they're busy doing other things, or they've had a bad day. I can tell my students when they come to class which ones have had had a pretty good day and which ones had a rough day. And I'm very sensitive to that. So some of my students that have had a rough day, we kind of decompress a little bit in the beginning of class about their day. And sometimes, depending on the class, they support each other and kind of talk a little bit about work to kind of get that passed. And then they end up relaxing and having a better time because they're already coming to class pretty tense. You already notice how tense they are when they come to class. So you really want to work. I really try hard to help them relax and not be so tense when they're training their dog, because that affects the dog. And if you have too many of those tense training moments in your, all the time, then this training isn't fun for your dog at all. It's like, oh God, and then you start to see the decline in the behaviors that you want. So it's an interesting dynamic in that we, as instructors, we see that when it happens to people, we know how we feel because we're always rushed. But when we see other people, your students, helping them kind of develop that mindset, like you need to breathe, relax. Now you're here. We'll enjoy our dogs. We'll have some fun searches or do some fun things in class, and your dog will, to enjoy that moment with your dog, and remind them that they're taking these classes because I do a lot of dog sport classes. They're here to enjoy their time with their dog, and this is their hobby, right? It's a little different when you have, just pet dog people, because they just want to hurry up, and that you see those people want to hurry up and get that dog trained. And it's like, this is where setting up those expectations, it's like your dog's not going to be trained in 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not going to happen. It's like, if we were able to do that, that would be great. And helping the people have, understand that it's going to take time, and it takes a long time to get a dog trained to where they want it. It's really
Well,
hard. Go ahead.
yeah, Aaron's comment was nice for those of you who can't see it. In agility class, there's a few times when we ran each other's dogs, we discovered that we had more patience for somebody else's dog, even though they were doing the same zooming behavior that our own dogs do. And like, even in basic classes, right, with very new people, they're not sport people, they don't have sport dogs, this is maybe their first dog or second or third, whatever, but it's an obedience class. And I feel like too, you said it right, is that expectation thing, but it's also the understanding piece. It's like everybody else's dog is doing it. And so when you can
Yes.
sort of help shape and give them understanding to, like, your dog's having trouble with this because, right?
Right.
Let's say, or the auditory stimuli in this room is too much, or it can see this, and you get a blanket, right? And the dog does better than the owner. It's like, as soon as you can shift that tiny little thing, I feel like the owners go, oh, and relax. And
Right.
I feel like that moment of I don't understand why this is happening, regardless if it's John Q. Public or the top level competitors, right? Like, why is my dog zooming around? He never does this. Or why is it taking so long to find that hide? It's a chair hide. I don't understand what's wrong with that. We sometimes, whether we're like starting to get a little, antsy, tapping our feet, moving around a little more than what we do, calling our dog, getting a little sharper. It's it's so funny because it's if that was your friends, if it's your best friend, you might be like, what's wrong with you today? But if it's somebody that you're close to but not that close to, you might turn up your patience a little, like, ooh, she's having a little trouble today, I wonder what's going
Right.
on, right? But we don't seem to do that with our dogs. We just get impatient.
Yep. And that's one of the things that, some basic things is having patience and being consistent. And the big thing big takeaway I'm kind of hoping people would take from tonight is have a goal for your training session. It may not be the goal that everybody else has, right? So, for example, in my obedience class, I am not looking for my dog to have a perfect whatever it is. My goal for each class is for her to enjoy it, uh, and make sure she's understanding what I'm asking. Whether we get to compete or not is not really in my mind. I'm not thinking, oh, wait till I get to compete. No, we're like, okay, I want to have this bonding time with this dog. I'm enjoying the learning, teaching, and she's enjoying the learning process and the training process, and we're enjoying our time together. And that is my goal for every class. And if we repeat things, and also that she's doing better than she did last week, that she's improved from the week or two before. And it's wonderful when you really think of it that way, because this last week on Thursday, her fronts, we were working on fronts, and they were kind of not so, we were having some trouble with it the last few weeks. And this week we worked on it again with the instructor's guidance, and she did really well, and she improved, and she really got it. She's understanding it. And we were having a lot of trouble with her stays, and now her stays are really, really good. So it was like, yeah, it may not be the perfect stay that you want for a competition, but it's better for her. There was improvement, and in a good, positive way. And she really enjoys, you could feel how much she enjoys the class, as I do. So it was and so now I feel a little guilt with my other dogs, because sometimes they don't get that, because she happens to have a class the first thing in the morning. So, there's my day hadn't started. I get to start my day that way, and it's kind of nice. I really enjoy it. My other dogs don't get that. I have to cram them in when I can. So it's for me. It's the goal is to figure out how to change that so that my other dogs get the same benefit of that. Right. The only one that gets probably the same as the puppy, my lab puppy, because he's young, and I have to be very patient, and I have to bring more extra these days because he's 13 months old. So
I think for me, carving out time is really important for us, regardless. Like I don't have classes are a little difficult to get to for where I am. There's different stuff going on, but they don't jive with my schedule, right? And it's kind of like everybody. But when I do, I'll carve out some time, and I do anything from like up to 5 minutes training with my dog at a time, and I'll just do one after another. And honestly, I find the most fun in that. And I'll be like, oh, let's play with this. Let's your stands. Let's do some stands. Let's do some square
mhm,
stands. Let's do some kickback stuff. Let's do some fitness. Because to me, it's about thoughtfulness for my dogs to move and so forth. And I want them to stay injury free as long as possible. So, we've been doing a lot of that stuff. But I find the most, that's been like really nice to do that. And I try to videotape it, so then I kind of describe what I'm doing, because it could actually help something somewhere down the road, right?
mhm,
And then help you eye stuff too. So, but no, and I think the hard part about this, like Deb had commented about, she has trainer friends who spend so much time training their dogs, and the dogs are incredible. Then there's my dog who is now as a trainer. It's embarrassing. You got to let that go. I mean,
mhm,
truly, because everybody is different. Like, and what I value is not the same as whoever else, what they value, right? We all have different goals, different ideas, and you got to let it go because, you know, first of all, it's like they're not paying your bills like everything else, right? No, don't pet my dog. You're not paying the bills. You're not doing this. You're not doing that.
Mhm.
You're not spending time with this individual and so forth. And you have to be happy with where you are in order to go forward. Otherwise, you're kind of dead in the water if you're constantly comparing yourself to everybody else.
Mhm.
It's no bueno.
Yep. And we do that. We have to help our students with that as well because they might have somebody in their class that's really great and but it's the circumstances are different. That particular person might have more time to train that dog and work on it more where you may not. So that's why we really work hard on getting our students to understand, hey, this person may have all the time in the world and you may not. And they also have a different dog. So you can't compare. And I think that's what the biggest issue in a class setting, right? The class setting is necessary for the dogs to be able to develop the skills to work around other dogs.
Mhm.
But there is that component that adds to that mental game for the human that the compare, well, my dog's not as good as that dog, or they feel they have certain feelings about that dog's better than mine. And it doesn't matter. Their goals might be very different from yours. And
Right.
especially as a dog trainer, like I tell, you know, I got to tell you, many years ago when I started training, well, a few years ago when I was really young, uh, I remember trainers saying, well, I don't allow my dogs to do this, and I don't remember I allow my dogs to do that. And I'm thinking, wow, what's wrong with me that I can't get that? Well, here's the thing, and goes back to what Lisa was saying. Lisa or this person is like, well, they only have, and I don't want to say only, their dogs are pet dogs
Right.
for walks. They live in their house. They go. So yes, those that's achievable. I was trying to have that behavior in dog sport classes. It's not the same thing. You
Mhm.
can't. It's a different training, and that's when I realized there's a difference between a pet dog trainer and a dog sport trainer. There's some there's some difference, and some of us can do both, and some of us can do one or the other. Um, so it was a very interesting learning for me. And Deb, as a trainer, I wouldn't really. I'm telling you, our industry's in a bit of a trouble anyway. I probably wouldn't compare myself to another trainer. Just
Mhm.
do your own thing, and get your dog where you need it to be, and be done with that.
Well, and the other thing that I will leave you with, which is mental game and dog training doesn't mean I'm training them to do things all the time, right? So, if you have that day where you're like, I am not feeling it, but my dogs need something, I will make sure that at the end, right? I take them individually and I might give them a food toy or I might throw the ball or I
Right.
might just let them play, but they still get that one-on-one, you are with me and you're engaged with me.
Right.
So when you're doing if you are someone who has to compare, like, okay, my dog is never going to be as good as that dog because whatever, I always go back and I say, yeah, but how happy is my dog? How enriched is my dog's life? My dog
Mhm.
get, right? They do get to play with me and they do get this and they do get, I feel like all my dogs are very happy dogs and they love their lives, right?
Mhm.
So I've seen some phenomenal sport dogs where they don't get a life. They do training and that's what they
Mhm.
do. And it reminds me of like the little pageant girls or, little
Yeah.
gymnastics. Like, this is what we're doing. You're going to school. You're going to eat this. You can't eat carbs and you're going to this and we're going to go to class and we're going to, it's sort of like you want to make sure that the dog has a choice too. So, um,
Yes. Agreed.
it's okay to not have the best dog, right? As long as you enjoy working with them and they are having a good time and everyone's happy, that's the most important thing.
Yeah. And Aaron posted about social media doesn't help when students or competitors only see the brags and the successes. And no one really posts about struggles. And that is a true statement.
Come
And
to
that's
my
why
page.
yeah. Well, but social media, right, everybody posts how great my dog is and all that, but they don't they just want to, and that's something that that human needs for their well-being. And yeah, it's helpful. Well, it's helpful to look for feedback and put yourself out there for things. So I'm a CO for NACSW. I just had a trial that didn't go very well, and I did put myself out there. I was like, okay, what could I have done better? What could I have improved on? What could have caused this situation to be what it was? And a lot of the other CEOs were very encouraging about me putting myself out there because nobody really does that, And I was like, yeah, I want to know, like, what could I have done, or what could I have improved on? Because I wish I could say, oh yeah, I know everything and everything, I can. It's like, no, sometimes, and you could put, look, we had this was a great thing. It's like, no, I had a bad situation. It wasn't it wasn't the best, but I don't want to keep having those happen. So I would, I looked for the feedback from my fellow people, COs, and I did, and everybody was surprised that but it's like, no, you have to put yourself out there. Sometimes, yeah, sometimes you have a crappy trial, and I don't usually sugarcoat that when I post, if I post on my Facebook about that. I'm like, well, it wasn't our best, but we did all right. But I think, yeah, social media is a situation, right? And so that's why you mentally, you have to kind of overcome some of that. Like, I'm sure you're glad for them, but sometimes I'm sure they had some struggles too, and nobody gets anywhere without some struggle. Trust me on that. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, two dogs are just like they were having fun. Yeah, Kathy, and you can see it's very obvious in obedience sometimes when the dogs aren't having fun. But you see a couple in agility that aren't, in agility sometimes if they're not happy, it could be a physical issue too. So sometimes we have to think about those kind of things, right? That it's not a physical problem that's causing them to not want to run or look like they're like not having fun. It's not maybe their owner or their handler. It could be just that they're not feeling well that day. And having said that, there's completely possible that maybe that day that dog's not having a good day. It's not feeling good that day. So you don't have a great training day. It's okay. Just think about that instead of, oh, this dog's it's a pain, it's a difficult, especially letting our own work day or whatever get in the way of kind of having that. Because it's the same if you have children, right? You work all day, but your kids need you when you get home, and you have to be able to turn it on and be prepared and give them what they need when you get there. So the dogs are the same. They didn't ask to, like Joanne said, they didn't ask to to do the sport and train. So it depends on yeah, and it's like, it's nice to train your dog, but yeah, there's I've known many people who overdo it, and the dogs aren't having the best life, even though they're very well trained. There's not it's not the quality that maybe, and maybe not the life that you would have chose for that particular animal, right? So it's one of those things. Anyway, so one of the things that you want to kind of consider when you're doing your mental situation is really, be consistent, have a plan on what you want to do, a goal. um I don't know, what other things could you suggest to help with, and be real clear about what you're going to achieve in that moment. And like Lisa said, it doesn't have to be 15, 20 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour. It could be 5 minutes. 5 minutes is just as good as an hour, because and probably even better if you do, um 5 minutes every day is better than doing an hour once a week, I would say. If I had to choose, that would be my choice if I could do that, right?
Um, Go ahead, Lisa.
No, well, go ahead. Yeah,
Oh.
you're gonna read the.
No, I was going to say something. Um, for me, and I don't know, maybe I'm different because I like, I don't consider myself competitive. Like,
Right.
I like to play the game, right? But I like to, that's it. I like to play the game. I don't need anyone else to play it with me, my dog, right? But for me, I don't always come in with goals in my head, and I don't know, maybe I'm weird, but
Well,
like
it's not goals like competitive goals. It's goals for that training session. Like,
I know, but to me it's almost more like I want to see how my dog says they understand this, right? Like,
right.
and I might set something challenging or hard, or I might set a couple of really easy things, and it's just like I just want to see how it goes. I want to see you tell me, does this make sense to you? You tell me, like, how was it? Um and sure, I mean, sometimes you want to say, like, okay, I'm going to work on whatever that goal is to teach a skill. But I don't, for me, like, it's not always about I'm teaching this skill and I want to make it better. Sometimes I just walk in and I just want to see you demonstrate to me how much you understand this. And then that way it's never right or wrong, right? You just come away with feedback from the dog like, "Huh, I totally thought that was way more clear than what it was." But when I set it up in such a way, you're telling me you don't quite get it as well as I thought you did. So it just gives you some insight sometimes to maybe then come up with the next goal or the next thing, as opposed to just speeding down the track thinking your dog's in a certain place.
But that is a kind of a goal, right? Your goal is to see where your dog but that is a plan, I guess.
Mhm.
If you maybe it's not maybe not goal, but a plan to what you want to achieve in that moment instead of just because I think it provides more clarity for you and for the dog. So it doesn't matter what it is. Maybe goal isn't the good word, but a plan. Like say you're going in there to see, does my dog understand this situation that I have?
Sure.
That is a plan for the training. So there's because if you're just going in there, let's see what happens, there's no clarity. And if you're not sure, there's no clarity for you or for the dog. So if you're going in there and saying, let's see if he understands this, that is, you're going in there trying to provide clarity for that, whatever task it is for that dog. And that's what I mean. I think a lot of you, if you go in there, let's just do anything. And you may not have a particular plan at the, far in advance, because I am not a planner like that. Sometimes it's like, oh, I'm going to work on, I don't know, balance, like Lisa with the fitness. I'm going to try to see if he can balance himself on, and if he's better than he was, or if he can hold it a little longer. So yeah, it might be 5 minutes, but that's my plan. Let's see how if he can do that, and let's see where he's at with that. So because then it's clear to me, like, because otherwise I don't know what we're working on and what he's if he's improving or not. Especially with my young dogs, like, is he getting better? Is he having more trouble, or what's the deal? So I really do try to have an idea. Again, not from a competitive standpoint, more so from a what do I want to achieve with between me and the dog to provide that clarity because it really is it's like working on any relationship, right? Communication, how we understand each other, all those things. It's basically that's the bottom line, right? Being having that communication between you and the dog and having that dog understand what you're asking. Or like you said, you thought you that my oh let's see, I think my dog knows this, let's test it. And then you're like, oh, maybe he doesn't do it as well as I thought he would. So that's still having some kind of a idea of what you want to achieve in that whatever short moment you have. Because I can't say I'm very competitive either because I'm not. Um, but I do want to make sure that I'm progressing my dogs as much as I can. And again, progression is relative because I can get one dog to one point, and the other dog may not get there. And that's not because of anything wrong with the dog. It's just because that's
When I've seen dogs, like comes to mind, right? So in agility class, like I've seen people just repeat the same thing over and over again. So they're drilling the dog. And then you see with the drilling, the behavior diminishes. It stops, it's not as precise and so forth because all of a sudden you're repeating it and the dog isn't getting feedback. And I think when we're working with dogs, one of the things we have to think about is we must be flexible in terms of what our expectations are. We can go in with a plan or an idea, but be willing to flex on that and say, hey, that's not
Mhm.
working for us. We need to adjust accordingly. And also to recognize that if a dog is getting frustrated and they start doing avoidance type of behaviors, then you're affecting your relationship, which is going to deplete, the good stuff in the bucket when it comes to times for repetition. And I think that's some of the stuff I've seen in agility. And then not only because agility is a very physical sport, I've seen people repeat things over and over again, and I've been guilty of it. I'm like, no, you will hit that contact, right? And looking back now, I'm like, oh, what a jerk I was about that, right? I should have just, wow, no wonder why. Why didn't he bite me? I should have. He had every right. But now I wouldn't do that kind of stuff. I'm like, we're having trouble. We might need to go back and adjust our criteria, right? And I think the flexibility with criteria is critical. And I think when we get into a class situation, right, we're always worried about what other people are thinking, or, some people are. But I'll tell you, like when I was doing classes in agility and stuff, if I felt we were struggling on a specific thing, right, they had a huge course laid out, I would go and I'd look at the course and I'm like, we're going to do 1 through 4. We're going to just focus on that piece for right now. I think I'm going to have a bit of a challenge there. And then I would take the next piece. And if I spent my whole turn doing 4 obstacles, well, then I spent my whole turn doing 4 obstacles, or, taking pieces at a time of it. And I think a lot of times people, when you're doing turns, I don't want to, we feel pressure. Like, and I've seen this in students where they feel pressure. Well, I don't want to keep taking up all the time. I'm like, you take the time you need, right? And it depends on what lesson you're gaining. And it's up to your instructor to say, okay, I think that's good for you and your dog for right now, and all that. And it's the same thing with, like, even in pet classes, I've had the same issue where people are like, this past Saturday, oh, your puppy's so good. I'm like, hello, he's a herding breed. Like, let's not forget that. That's huge. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't bring my pappy on for a reason. I love him. Don't get me wrong. But he's a different, like, we pick the dogs we pick, right? And you can't deny the genetics behind it either. Like, I'm not, let's be clear out honest. Like, friggin' herding breeds are easy to train. They're easy. If you're
a good trainer.
Well, if you're minus the arousal, right? Minus the arousal piece, right? There's temperamental pieces as well to it.
Or if you're sloppy, they're really hard to train.
Yes.
Right. You're right. But, for the most part, the reason why most trainers take them is because they're easy to engage. Mm-hmm. It doesn't take much. If I had a hound, I'm like, hey, look at me. Look, I smell, pay attention. Let's do stuff, and it's a little different, And I think those are some things too. It's like, you can't compare breed to breed either, or
Right.
even breed within breed, and then there's so many components to it. You can't, it's just not a fair thing. But I also think we come from a very judgy type of society currently.
Oh, yeah.
But that's a whole nother story.
Yeah. No, we it's true. It's like you have you can't. I know one of my students had one breed, and she admired the training prowess of another. It's like, oh, I wish my dog would be like that. It's like, why? We kind of pick the breeds we have for a reason,
Mm-hmm.
and what we love about them. And sometimes there's like I always say, I tell people having a lab in nose work is kind of a cheat because they're really good at it. I mean, I haven't had to work really hard with my labs, whether with my shepherds, a little harder, and the beagle, a lot harder. So, but still having a good time, and they're still enjoying it. Just a different, the sporting breeds are, for scent work is it's what they're bred to do. So yeah, it's kind of not that hard most of the time, right?
Right.
But not that you couldn't have a tough one to do. Yes, Matt, that's a really good. That's a great analogy. Matt's racing a high performance car versus racing a minivan. Both can do the good things, but differently. That's right. And you might get really hurt doing one and not the other. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lauren says, if I'm having an off day, I think that Denver might be, I work below threshold to maybe have a more successful session.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
that's exactly what Lisa's talking about, is the criteria,
Adjustment,
right?
yeah.
Being very flexible with your criteria, depending on who you got in front of you at that moment. So, and the thing I like about her comment though, is she said, if I am having a bad day, I might work before below threshold, right? So it's like allowing yourself the same courtesy as your dog,
Yes.
Right.
right?
Right. Because it
So
matters.
before we came on, I was talking about, and if you guys don't mind to indulge me in this, um, it was a really good blog. And then maybe I sent it to both Joanne and Nancy. Maybe you could pop it in the chat or something. But it was interesting. It talks about
Let me see if I can
it
find
was
it.
in related. It was in relation to what can we learn from Caesar Milan, and it was interesting because in dog training, there's not a lot of new things, new techniques, new this, new that. They're pretty much the same, but there's different spins on them. And it's what we do, right? As trainers, we try to help people have a better understanding of a concept by using different analogies. So the analogy he used was like when you're looking to learn something, don't look for the black umbrellas, look for the yellow, right? So if all the black umbrellas are, oh, I wouldn't do that, or you're critiquing and stuff like that, they look the same, it's not kind of your bag and so forth, you look for the yellow umbrella. So you can always take something away from something or someone. And it was really a cool idea. But one of the reasons that this particular person brought this up, so you guys watch TED, right?
Oh,
TED,
TED Talk?
yeah, TED Talks and stuff.
Oh, yeah, all the
I guess
time.
there was a speaker on there talking about body language and the difference in how you hold yourself, right? So if you come in and power posing, they call it.
Mhm.
So you can, what is it? High power, where you're expansive, taking up space, legs apart, arms wide, and so forth. So think of like Superwoman versus low power, where your arms are crossed, you're more closed and so forth, slouching and secure. I always slouch because I have bad form. Anyway, so it was very interesting how they talked about the power pose and how if you rehearse the high power pose after 2 minutes, it increases the level of testosterone, a hormone related to aggression, and about 20%. And it also decreased the cortisol levels by 1/4. And so what's interesting about that is that um, when you do this, it changes what's happening in your body chemically, right? And so it was pretty interesting because then the question is does it change behavior in the dog we are talking to? And it does. So if you ever look at the way, um, and I'm not picking, I'm just saying Caesar Milan, the way he stands towards dogs, he's very high power, forward and facing, and almost, in my opinion, in my personal opinion, it's almost confrontational, right? So if I come
Mhm.
up to somebody and I'm like, Superman up to them and so forth, they're like, wow, that's a lot of energy. And it's the same idea. So, but it was interesting. Well, the interesting part about it, when we talk about how the dog's noses are, they're smelling all that change in us. And those are chemicals that we have no concept of even putting into our framework when we're working with our dogs, right?
Right.
And we have to be really aware of that stuff because it does affect how we work with our dogs, right? So it was a really cool article. I enjoyed it, but I geek out on that stuff. The person that wrote it was an ethologist and works not with dogs but behavior itself. And this talks about communication with people and so forth, but it is truly applicable to dogs for sure, and I'm assuming other animals too. But I
Mhm.
thought it was so fascinating.
Yeah. Well, actually, about the how you carry yourself, it's like we could do a study with in my house. My husband is my dogs do not listen to that man a lot of the time. And depending on where he is mentally, or if he had just gotten up or he's getting ready, winding down for bed, my dogs are a lot less responsive
Yeah.
to his information, because he's not going to back it up either. That's a whole nother thing. But when he is kind of in his stride, kind of kind of in his better power pose, if you will, they do listen to him a little bit more, which is
Mhm.
very interesting. So even in a day, you can see how the difference, how the dog responds
Right.
to people. When he's in the morning, that you could hear him blah blah blah, stop that, cut that out, and all that. In the middle of the day, when he's kind of up and doing stuff and a little more with it, the dogs are a little bit more they're a little bit more responsive to whatever he's asking them to do. So it's interesting because even in a day you could see
Fluctuates.
how it fluctuates, and the dogs kind of feel, get that, right? Even my cats too. My cats don't listen to him either. but but yeah, and in classes you have to be creative to kind of break and make it more fun and more engaging for the people, because the more fun the people are having, the more engaged they are, the more fun the dog's going to have, and the more they relax and so on. So that's kind of what I wanted you to kind of take away from that, like just really think about how you're feeling in that moment when you're getting ready to train your dog or getting ready to go into that competition, right? And what you're saying to yourself and about your dog, which brings us to another, um, what you're verbalizing really, words carry, right? Oh, my dog's a dumb dog, or he's this, or he's just a boy, or like we do sometimes, and they do act that way. you know but you want to be careful what you're saying or what you're thinking about when you're working with your dog, because that carries also to trials, right? When you're going to go to compete, if you're thinking, oh my gosh, my dog, I don't think he's going to be able to do this, he's not as smart, he's not as good, he's not whatever it is, that's going to carry over into your competition, right? So you
So
want
the,
you
so
want
the
to
mindset. Sorry, go ahead.
so you want to look at what the dog is doing right and what you're doing right too. It really
Hmm.
matters, because then you're going to feel good about it, and you get used to feeling good about it when you're with your dog as you go into competitions and whatnot.
So I think too, like if you go into it, you're like, okay, I think we're prepared, and then go in with the idea of what are we, what are we going to learn today? Right? What are we going to learn today? And not in a negative way, like, oh yeah, how are we going to screw up and learn from how we have to adjust it? But just like, what are we going to learn? What did we learn and what do we need to work on? So it was funny. And people laugh. So I'm like, whatever, who cares? If it makes you laugh, good for you. But I took tenor in. So tenor's 4. And and so I took him into class, and so I was taking him to demonstrate him out. So I do a sit stay, and I'm like, okay, so I'm okay, doing duration first, then distraction, then you add distance, right? And that's the way I teach it. So I was like, okay, here's duration. He's like, cool, I got that. And then I start to do distraction, and I started to walk around, and he couldn't hold the stay as I walked around him. I'm like, shoot. Not that word specifically, but I'm like, oh, well, look, I found a hole. And I was like, let me try that again. Maybe that was a fluke. So I'm like, nope, I didn't try that. So it was just interesting, and people were laughing and stuff because I'm like, nobody's perfect. I don't know anybody who's perfect. I'm like, okay, note to self, I'll put that on the list. So,
Yeah.
I think people have a different idea of two of trainers' dogs, and they have to also think, like, I like to use my dogs in demos because it's real time. I'm half, how can I say this? I'm half attached to it and I can't care about it. I'm like, okay. So I use it more as a lesson when I'm working with people and stuff. I'm like, this isn't perfect, but this is where we are and this is how I would change it moving forward. Because I think everything you can learn.
Oh yeah, totally. And especially from, like, I really, and I know, I think in the three of us, we don't ever say, "Oh, my dog's perfect at that" or whatever. We always we always own it, right? Because we own it publicly here
Right.
about some of our holes and some of the things we don't have. I mean, even though our dogs by and large are pretty good dogs, they have, relatively good manners mostly, but they're not perfect. Um, and and like we talk a lot about adolescent dogs. I have an adolescent dog now. Do I like him all the time? No. Is he a love? Yes. And I know, but I always say, I know it's going to pass. He's going to grow up, and I need to enjoy the moments now that he's young, and the silliness that he has, because that eventually there'll be, even though my shepherd's silliness never went away, but so I suspect my young male lab probably will not have that, will also kind of stay that way as
Well,
well.
isn't that par for the sporting breeds, the Peter Pan
Well,
syndrome?
Tank is not a sporting breed. He's a shepherd, for crying out
No, Shepherd. He's an anomaly.
Yeah, he is. But you get to enjoy that time when they're young, and because before you know it, they'll be you know, all
You could
grown up.
borrow my 5-year-old. He'll be like that till his body won't let him be like that anymore.
Right.
Yes.
I get it.
Whatever.
But
Yes.
I think ultimately too, it's like there's so many components to it, and we complicate it so much by adding our feelings into
Yep.
training your dog. And it's like you're doing this because it should be somewhat relaxing and fun, right? There should be an
Mhm.
exchange of some good vibes between you and your dog. And you really should assess, because if you're not having fun, there's no way your dog is enjoying the
That's
conversation
right.
either.
That is, and
Yeah.
Erin just said something. She had to change her mental attitude with Vixen in both agility and trials several times to keep my patience on check.
Mhm.
Because yeah, you have your students watching, so you have to set the example, right?
Oh no,
And
she said I always do it with the mindset that my students are watching.
yes, right.
That's
And
that's what I love so much about that, because I don't know how much people follow. The thing that I keep thinking about was the agility lady that was trialing for world team, and like for whatever reason, like her dog lunged or got excited or something, and she yanked back on the dog, and right, the world went crazy, and she was not allowed to try out. Right, she's not allowed to be on world team anymore. And in that split second of you were on camera, the just
Yeah.
that 3 seconds of that
And
happening,
people judge that just that,
but her career now, it affected her
right?
entire agility career. She's a trainer, and it's like, if we would, social media and cameras are everywhere, so
Mhm.
if it helps to keep you in check, just always remember that you might be being filmed somewhere, and that might end up on Facebook. And how would you feel about that?
Right,
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 right.
if somebody got you on camera doing something in your most frustrated moment, would it ruin your life? Would it ruin your career? Or would you be like, that dog was being kind of a jerk? I mean, I feel like that was a warranted, you know what I mean? Like, or are you going to sweep them off their feet and choke them out and do all those nasty things that are not warranted in a situation of they were trying, they made a misstep?
Mhm.
right. Matt, Matt says, I always say that training is simple, but it's not easy. That is absolutely a true statement. It
Yep.
is not easy because you're dealing with yourself as a person and trying to um, help train a being that doesn't speak your language, and you're also dealing with that other being's feelings, physical, mental, all of that, and you're trying to accomplish something together. And it's doable, obviously, because many people have done it throughout the ages. But it's just figuring out how to do it as humanely as possible and in the best way possible. And now, Doug, and as Lisa said, there's nothing really new out there in dog training anymore. However, it has evolved in a better direction for sure than when we first started training. There was still, and not that there's not a lot of compulsion, there still is, but it's more now. There's the positive. It's a balance, and we always talk about it, right? Too much compulsion is no bueno. Too much positive is no bueno either. The in the middle, because the shifting of, oh, never say no to the dog. You can never blah blah blah. That's crazy, because a no is a communication, just like a yes is, or a good dog, or whatever. It's just a matter of uh, communicating it effectively and efficiently without causing the other being pain or stress or anything like that. Because it's no different than I'm saying, right? Somebody told me something that I don't like, or did something I don't like, I'm like, hey, I would appreciate you not doing that. Don't do that. It's still communication. I'm saying no, I don't appreciate that, but I'm still communicating this. It's important for them to know. Not saying anything and going, oh, it and sweeping it under the rug, or just ignoring it, doesn't make it won't make it stop, and it doesn't make you feel good either. So
I think, well, the one thing that's changed about, and you guys can chime in, of course, but about dog training that's different now, there's more scientific data and information available that we can refer to. And I think that was sorely missing in the beginning, right? Because it was more of it's an animal, it's property and so forth. And now we know better. And so now things have to evolve accordingly. But I
Yeah.
think that's huge. That's
And
different.
And not even just that, right? Where the data is there, but then you have all the dog trainers in the world who, let's be fair, 20 years ago they're like, that's mine. I'm not talking about it unless you pay me money, right? And now everyone's sharing all the things to be like, let's just make life better for everyone.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Right.
it's a
Well,
nice
no one
place,
can hold the key. No one person can hold the key, right? That's not
right?
realistic because
Right.
even if it's one person, how many people are you touching? It's
Hmm.
better to share the information, share the knowledge so that people can know. Like there's no, you can't do it all. You can't.
Right.
So,
And
No,
Lauren asked a good question. Do you think we've moved in a direction that takes dogs' point of view into consideration? Some,
I'm getting closer.
we're
yeah.
getting closer. I don't think we're getting closer because part of the problem, Lauren, is sometimes we are putting information that, oh, my dog is this or my dog is that when the dog is not that. And it's hard because it's another being. They don't speak English. So we're in some cases we're guessing.
Yeah.
And
Well,
depending, and unfortunately those guesses are formed from your personal biases, your experience, and your thought process. So they might not be factual. That might not be what you're actually seeing or what the dog is thinking. It's what you're feeling and what you're thinking. And I'm in Pennsylvania doing workshops, nosework workshops here, and we had one of the wonderful participants today. It was like, well, we were talking about her describing what the dog was doing, what her own dog was doing, and she goes, well, he's all stressed out and this and that, and I didn't see a stressed dog, and I asked her, I go, what made you think that he was stressed? and and so I help her. It's like it's not one thing, it's a lot of things that would cause you to see that. And basically it came down to she thought that maybe because she thought because he's had an issue prior that he still might be feeling the same way, but none of the behavior, body language spoke to that. So that's why it's hard to go. You have to look at the body language and then you make your determination, even though because I can't tell you, Lauren, how many dog trainers, oh, he's feeling this and that based on nothing but what they think it should be.
right. Well, and
But
I think you can't know. I mean, right? Suzanne talks about umwelt, and so there's so many others, right? And what that means is like I'm aware of my own world and what's happening within my world, within myself. Whereas we don't know I don't know what Joanne's feeling or thinking, and or Nancy or even any of my dogs. It's best guess, right? I can go based upon what your body language is saying and guess this is what it looks like to me. Let's test the theory. And I think that's what makes a really good trainer is that you're able to flex in the moment to whether you're doing this professionally or not, you have to be able to flex in the moment for that individual in front of you, right? You're not going to know every single thing. And it's okay to not know everything. You're like, I don't know. That's kind of like with that one video that Joanne you had sent. I was like, oh, I don't know. It looks
I don't
like
know what that
soothing, but
is.
almost
Yeah.
kind of crazy. We can only make our best guess based upon history and so forth, right? What we've learned, our environment,
right.
our genetic, all that stuff contributes to it. So, there's so much going on. Give yourself a break and give your dog one too.
Yeah, and no, it's true because it's so. I think and as you go through for dog trainers and some of the people who choose this profession, um, you can probably hear most of the some of the dog trainers. Well, I became a dog trainer because I don't like people, and when
Good
I
luck.
so when I first started training, I'm like, what? How do you not like people and train dogs? I don't understand because that is not my personality at all. So I was
No.
like, how do you not? You're training people. How do you not like? I mean, I love dogs too, but I also love people. And so I'm like, I don't understand how many, you know. So it's just an interesting. You're not only working with And maybe a lot of us that become that train dogs have a kinship with animals. There's always something there with that we have with animals. But I also like people a great deal. It's not all the time, but mostly I enjoy
Mhm.
people very much, and that connection to them, and that being in that moment. Like that's why doing seminars and stuff is so. I really enjoy it because it's new people and new dogs and just kind of getting to know those dogs. That's the people and all that. It's really fun. But yeah, it was interesting, very interesting about that. Because yeah, majority, if you ask most dog trainers, most of them are not people oriented folks. So
It's funny how Matt says he has to flex every day having 105 eighth graders.
funny.
You are a saint.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'd
That's all
be
I'm saying.
flexing.
I can't do
I'd
that.
be flexing myself.
We flexing our arm. Oh
But
boy,
not this way because you'll get arrested. But
nice.
well,
uh,
Matt is one of our new instructors at For Your Canine. He started, I think yesterday was his first class, teaching puppy and basic. He's come back to the dog world, but that's why I'm like, you work with that many eighth graders, you're in, because it's like that takes that.
we know you won't kill anyone.
Well, the
Yeah,
eighth graders have an excuse, right? Their
Yes.
hormones are all
hormonal,
over the place. When we're dealing with adults, it's like use some more self control. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So Lauren, we also think about the value of training for certain behaviors
thanks, Elsa.
brings to us, but not about the value of a certain behavior that brings to the dog. Right.
Ooh,
So
maybe
that's
that's a new Facebook Live.
yeah, that is a new Facebook Live. That is a great statement because sometimes we want the dogs to do,
Well,
to learn a specific, because yeah, I am very like, with the behaviors I want my dogs to perform are very specific to me. Some of the other stuff I don't care. Like my dogs have to have a good recall. It's really important to me. That matters to me a great deal. um, do they have to have the perfect stay? No, they just have to have a good enough stay for me to be able to have them wait a minute while I grab something or whatever. They don't have to be able to do it from 500 yards away. It's fine. Um, do they need to have the perfect heel position unless I'm going to actually compete? No, I don't. I don't worry about that. So there's specific behaviors that I care about that I work on. Otherwise, I don't really. Um, I whatever specific to me. I don't care that my dog doesn't get on the couch, or if they get on the couch. I don't care about that. That's okay for me. Some people don't like that, or some people are asking for behaviors that, yeah, it's like they just want it just to have it to show off, which is not really great for the dog. So yes,
See,
and Lauren, I'm gonna say in obedience that healing is really concerning for me because it's physically. I don't think it's good for the dog.
mm-mm.
see, and I even think more along the lines of like relaxation protocol and auto
Yeah.
check-in and
Yep.
pattern, right?
Life
Like that doesn't bring me a ton, but it brings me better, right? Like
connection.
it helps my dog not get so aroused, right? It helps my dog learn self-control. It helps so yeah, I mean it's just something that I teach, but it makes my dog a much more well-rounded individual, right? So
Mhm. Yeah. But
One,
but yeah, some of the behaviors, like, some of the behaviors that we are teaching in certain things are not great for the dogs, Lauren. I'm gonna, and I will pick a little bit on obedience on that, because that hills, and you see it and people think, oh, that looks so great. It is not. I don't think it's great for the dog physically,
mm,
myself. It just doesn't look like it's going to sustain. So I might get a little hate mail from that, but but some of the behaviors we're asking, um, and just because it looks cool is not really a good reason to do
you
it.
know, come to some of the things that come to mind with Lauren, for example. Um, when she said that was some of the things where they do the cooperative care stuff and the
Mhm.
length of time it takes, and if you can't read the dog and so forth. And it's a new, like, training is nuanced, right? It's no different than dealing with anything else in life. You have to know how to balance it out based upon what's going on at that time. And But I think about, for example, like consent training, when they start doing the consent stuff and giving them an option and so forth. And I was like, okay, and what comes to mind is like how I screwed up the whole thing with Cadence's nails. Now she's like, when she's sedated, she pulls away. I'm like, I built that really strong. And I wish I didn't do that. Like, I thought I was doing what was good for her. Right. And then in the end, she was like, no, it's very scary. Even if to this day, I pick up some nail clippers, she's like, I'm out, gotta go. And she'll leave. And so, I did a really good job training that. Will I do that again? Absolutely not. I'm gonna look at it a little differently, right, with a different lens based upon my learning from my previous dogs. But
Mhm.
That was the consent stuff. You pulled
Yeah.
away and you stopped, and so then she just learned
Yep.
like,
Yep.
okay,
Yep.
Yep.
yeah,
You can see how that backfires,
Yep.
right? And it
Yep.
totally depends on the individual dog. And I'm like, I could kick my own butt for that. I'm like, sorry, that was my fault.
Yeah.
So
And
we're always learning.
and right, and for Jive, she was terrible with the nails, and so we started using the scratch board, and she loved it. And she, we and I had to put my patient's hat on, and so because it's important, so we did that. Now we're actually able to Dremel and or clip her nails because we made it so much fun for her.
Right.
She was like,
Well,
okay,
I've done the scratch board. My only problem with the scratch board, and I've been looking for them, they're not rounded enough to catch the outside of the
right,
nails.
yep,
That's the problem, right? Because you only get the two. So
right.
that was my biggest issue. And I'm like,
I
and
could
her
do my
nails.
spa day routine on that. Did I tell you what I did?
No, what'd you do?
So Noah he'll do it if I tether him to the thing and I do it real quick. He's all right. He doesn't like it, but he'll tolerate it. So I was like, maybe let's make it better with a scratch pad. And so he was like, right. And he was barely like, so I was like, all right. So I'm like, hey, shake. And he's like, okay. And I was like, I would do it with one nail at a time, and then I'd give him a treat, and then I'd do it with the next nail. And he was like, that's weird, but okay.
That's
Isn't
great,
that
clever.
things we learn?
Well, he
That's great.
didn't mind it, and it was fine, and it was a cookie party. And yes, it takes a little longer, but you can try that with one nail at a time, Lisa. Just telling you it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jive,
Anytime I touch it, she's like, stop looking at my feet. I'm like,
yeah, Jive found it. Yeah, she was like digging for the food. She just loved it. She just enjoyed it so much. And I bring it out. She's like, woohoo, we're gonna do that thing.
I saw someone modified a scratch pad into a slidey drawer.
uh-huh.
And so it's like basically they put the hot dog in this little slidey drawer.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And the dog, as the dog, scratch, they slide it open. They let the dog eat the hot dog. Then they put a new one in and slide it back.
Cool.
Yeah. So it was a little more engaging with the dog as opposed to like, I have the treats over here and I'll give you one when. So the dog got a little more aggressive with the scratch.
Oh my God. Jive would tear it apart.
So that was interesting too. Sorry, we've gone way off topic.
Yeah, sorry. All right, guys. So anyway, so so I want the takeaway that we hope you is really be consistent, be patient, and enjoy the time, and really get yourself in a good place. Breathing is really important when you're training your dogs. Super important, or competing, and all that. So enjoy that time with your dogs, because again, not to be morbid, but they're not with us very long, and this part is the fun part, right? Watching them learn and grow and develop. We just have to make sure we want to be process oriented, just like you would in competition. You want to be process oriented, not results oriented, which is what we tend to be more results oriented. We want to just get to the end result instead of enjoying the process of getting there, right? Whether you're training your dog or going to competition, because that's the biggest, like Lisa said, you're learning and figuring things out, whether you're trialing or whether you're just training the dog. Anyway, have a great night, you guys. Thank you for joining us, and see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.